For today's agenda, we are going to be focusing on three main areas: understanding route criteria, the importance of mapping and address verification, setting up regions, and defining the route criteria. Then we'll segue into building routes, how to create those routes, how to update routes, view changes, and view route history. And lastly, we'll be taking a look at understanding expenses, setting up expenses, and reporting on expenses in CRM. We'll begin with the route criteria. When we're looking at route criteria, we need to discuss the importance of mapping or job verification. In PSA, there are a number of different areas where we can capture and verify map information. The first area is job verification, and this would be done through Proven Jobs. We've recently added this feature to Proven Jobs, which will allow you to verify the job address upon job creation. Now, we typically want to verify our addresses because it becomes important when we're using other features like Proven On-Site and Proven Jobs Mobile, both of which use Google Maps. Within Proven Jobs, on the Create screen, you'll notice that there is a checkbox above the address fields there, allowing the system to verify the address that's been entered on the Job Create screen. The orange banner at the top of the screen will appear when you've clicked Save to move the job forward. Now you have the option to click Yes to accept the address that Google has found, No, or Cancel. If you do cancel, it will leave you on the Job Create screen, giving you the opportunity to update the address. And again, when you hit Save, it will try to verify that address again. Our second area where we have our verification of address is at the organization level or company level. The organization addresses are automatically looked up when we create them in Proven CRM, and they can also now be verified when creating a new company within Proven Jobs. We will see that same verification checkbox in Proven Jobs just above the address field. And again, when we go to save the company record, we will have the opportunity to verify that address. Again, the orange banner at the top confirming the address found, yes, no, or cancel. Now, in the CRM side of things, at the organization, when we create or if we modify or edit the existing organization address, the system will also automatically verify that address, asking again, do you want to verify this address or use this address? Yes, no, or we can look up the address map. This would take you into the mapping area, allowing you to type in a specific address or search for a specific address. Now, we also verify address information at the contact level. Typically, when we create a contact, we are using the address at the organization level or what's been defined at the organization level. If the contact does have a separate address from the organization or company, you do have an opportunity again to verify that address. Now, keep in mind the importance of verifying these addresses is that when we go to build our routes, we will be able to map to that specific location. If the address is incorrect or missing, we will not be able to add that organization or contact to our route. Now, within the CRM, we are provided with an opportunity to locate and find those organizations or contacts that may have a missing address or an incorrect address. This can be found within the CRM under the organization menu. In the top left-hand corner, we're going to select Address Manager, and we're going to select All Address. Once we make that selection, we can filter for the find over there in our map column, so we can see all of the organizations where we need to fix or modify the existing address. Another factor to building a successful route is defining our regions. Regions are geographical boundaries that allow you to group your organizations or contacts based upon their address. When getting started in the CRM, when creating a region, this can be located under My Company, User, Regions, New Record. If you're already using the dashboard and the region widget, it can also be found there, and we can use Manage My Regions. Now, to create a new region, we do have to give it a title, and then we do select a color, and this color will correspond to the maps or to the pins on the map. So when we're looking at the map, we'll see different colors based upon the region. When we go to define the region, we will need to define its territory or borders that contain that region. And this can be done through 3 different ways. We can contain that region by the state or province, by the city, or by the zip code or postal code. So here we're in the CRM under My Company in the region area. Over on the left-hand side, we'll see that we have selections for by state, by city, and by zip code. Now keep in mind, you can use a combination of these 3. Typically, we would see it by city and by zip code. So if you're adding cities and you know sometimes certain cities aren't necessarily listed within that city, you can add those outlying zip codes if needed. Now, if you would prefer to work through a map view, there is also the ability just below the zip code, you have to have the zip code selected, and then below that area, it would allow you to go into a map and you can start dropping points on the map that would allow you to define that region's boundary based upon what's highlighted in red. So this is a little bit of an easier way to grab all those zip codes within a specific area by grabbing it on the map here. Once we have our regions defined, and if we haven't used the widget on the dashboard before, we can go ahead and go into the dashboard in the CRM and select our regions. Now, when we're using the regions for the first time, we'll see the message over on the left-hand side where we have the opportunity to select an existing region, or we can create our own regions, which is where we were just prior to this prior slide, where we can create our own. Now, it's important to point out that once you select other user regions, you're going to want to select all the appropriate regions that you're going to need for your routes, as this is an area you can't get back into once you've made your selection. You can certainly add additional regions that you create yourself, but if we're working off an existing region created by someone else, we want to select them prior to creating our own. Now, typically, if we're selecting the other user regions, they're typically going to be created by your sales manager or marketing directory for you, and they would direct you to select those particular regions. If not, if no regions have been defined, you can have the opportunity to create your own regions. On our dashboard, once we have our regions selected, you'll notice on our map we have the different pin colors, and we'll see on the far left there our regions are different colors there. We've got Guelph in the green, Barrie in our red, Waterloo in our purple, and Toronto in our blue. Now you can filter your map based upon your regions as a visual cue here. You would just simply take your mouse and unclick your selection in the box, and it would remove those pins for that particular region from our widget view. Another factor to building our routes is defining our organization types. These types are a way to categorize each office. And keep in mind, an organization or company can have multiple types. In the CRM, we'll see these organizations types defined over on the left-hand side of the screen. At the top portion there, we can see that on this particular example, we have a vendor relationship as well as a company management relationship. Now, when we're looking at organization types, and they're called organization types in the CRM, they're called company types in Proven Jobs, but they are one and the same. Organization types can be added from either location, CRM or Proven Jobs. Now, our organization types are broken into primary and secondary types. The primary type is required. When we create a new organization or a company, the system will require you to select at least one type. And this type has to be either customer, vendor, or we'll have a dual type if we select both customer and vendor. Now, when we think of the primary types, it's easy to think from an accounting standpoint. So if we're thinking customer, this is the person that's paying the bill, the person that's associated to the invoice on the AR side of accounting. When we're looking at the other side, on the AP side, we think of a vendor that we're going to be either billing or expensing or creating a voucher against. Now, if this organization or company is going to be both, you can assign both a customer and vendor relationship to the record. Again, we can have more than one company type defined. Now, outside of making our selection on our primary type, we encourage you to go a step further and define secondary types. The secondary type is going to allow us to further define our relationship or hone in on a specific group. So common secondary types that we see is policyholder, insurance office, adjuster office, agency office, property manager. And you'll also recall that when you have these other secondary types, we can also define these relationships on our jobs in Proven Jobs. But we're also going to use them in the CRM to identify those different relationships that we may want to target in our routes. If we're not defining with these secondary types, it's going to be almost impossible for us to pinpoint and select specific organizations or contacts to target our routes to. Now, secondary types on the vendor side would include plumber, electrician, supplier, general contractor. Now, these are some of the recommended secondary types. Your company administrator can certainly create these secondary types. So if there's not one that's already in the system for you to use, they can be created by the administrator from either system, from the CRM or from the Proven Jobs side of thing. Once we have our organization or company types defined, we'll then look at our route groups and contact group labels. This again allows us to better arrange and group our contacts and organizations. So when we're building our route, we can really focus in on those particular contacts. Now in the CRM, our route groups are defined and our route label are defined in the bottom right-hand corner. Now, route label can only be defined by selecting one at the organization level, but you can certainly define additional route labels on the contact records if needed. Now, a route label or group is sometimes geographically based, or it doesn't necessarily have to be, but again, it's just a label that we define, and it's defined by the company administrator. So once they're defined, we can select and assign them to the organization and to our contacts. We can also define our, oh, I missed my slide here, sorry. So we've got our route labels. Here we can see the different ones. Again, this one's geographically based, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It can be other labels of our choosing. We also have our contact group. Now, contact groups allow us to, again, group our organizations and contacts together. In this case, we have examples of that would be plumbers, property managers, HVC, electricians, adjusters, agents. And again, it's another way for us to group. So when we're selecting or building our routes, we can hone in on that specific contact group. The last area we're going to talk about is our BD types or business development types. Again, another way for us to organize or group our organizations and contacts. This particular one is more based towards hobbies or affiliations or sports. So again, when we're defining our routes, we can target those specific organizations or contacts. So here in the CRM, our BD types are defined here in the bottom right-hand corner. And we can assign as many BD types or business development types as we need to. There is not a restriction at the organization level. Once we have all of the building factors in place to defining our routes and building our routes, we can physically go in to start building our route stops. Within the CRM, within the main menu, within routes, we have the opportunity to create a new route. Now at the top here, we do have the ability to add a route name. If you don't add a route name, the system will automatically timestamp it with today's date, but you can always go back in and edit the route name if you choose or if you forget to. Now to start a route, we have 3 options to start. We have the add my office, add my address, and select contact. Now, if we use the my office, this information is going to start your route from what we have defined under my company, under the company information. So here, this is our office location. So when I start my route, it's going to use that first pin as my address starting point. Your other option would be to use your address. Now, this is the address on the user's profile. So within my company under user, under update information, the system would be using the address on the user record. So again, if you're maybe working from home or you want to start from home or your start's always going to be different than your office, we'd want that to reflect the address of where we would start our route. No, our third option is to select a contact. So if we don't want to start a route at the office or at my address, we can simply skip over those and select our first contact in our route. Now, if I select the contact option in the CRM, it's going to take me in to the select contact area, and I can start building my route. Now, over on the left-hand side of the screen, I have checkboxes that allow me to check and select which contact I want to add to my route. If I don't have a specific contact that I need to put my stop in for, we can certainly select a organization. Now, typically, you're not soliciting to a brick and mortar, you're soliciting towards a contact, but if maybe it's a new relationship and you don't necessarily have contact information for that organization, you can certainly set your first stop or set your stop to the organization opposed to a contact. Now, when we're within the select contact, this is where the regions come into play. So if I want to filter down and focus my route on a specific region, I'm going to select the region from the drop-down list in the upper right-hand corner. Once I make my selection, I have the ability to filter down further. And again, we talked about BD types and route labels and our contact group. This is where we would then be able to define and filter and focus on specific building development types. So if I wanted to focus my golfers, or if I wanted to focus maybe a certain sport, again, these labels are all defined at the organization and contact level, but you can see here it's going to allow us to filter and find and target our specific route. And again, either by BD types or that route label, again, being geographically based, or it can be based on other nicknames of certain areas. Every area is kind of unique in the names that they use to refer geographically. And then we can use our contact groups, again, defining the physical relationship. Are they a plumber? Are they an agent? Are they a property management company or a property manager? So I can filter by those fields, which will filter down my selection of contacts and organizations for my stop. Once I make my selections, again, by either using my checkboxes, or if I've filtered down on the previous screen, I can use the select all filtered items here at the top, and the system will automatically bring over all of my filtered selections automatically, but you can pick and choose individually by using the checkbox to display our selected contacts and organizations on the right side here. It also gives us some visual cues here in the upper left. I've got 2 contacts selected and 5 organizations selected. Now, once I have the contacts and go into the route itself, we can see that Google is arranging them for us alphabetically. Now, we can have up to 25 stops, A through Y. Now, if you do exceed 26 or 25 stops, the system will add another route for those extra stop locations. It's just one route can only contain that. It's not a restriction of our system per se, but Google only goes through 26 total stops. And again, we say 25 if you're using your address or office address as one of those stops. Now, what's nice about this is the system's smart enough to know that if we have 2 contacts from the same office, it will consider it one stop. So we won't see each one listed twice. In our route stop, we'll only see them listed once, but we'll see each contact listed below that letter. And again, we can also focus stops on organizations. They don't necessarily have to be contacts. This kind of ties back to the address verification step we've talked about before. If we don't have a verified address, the system will give us an alert that there is no directions found, indicating that we have a problem with the address and we need to go back and make sure that we're verifying it for correct information. Now, once we have the route stops in here, we can certainly manipulate further if we need to. If you hover over your route stop selection, it will present you with a trash can, and you can certainly click that trash can to remove that contact or that organization from the route stops. And here we would just say, yes, we want to remove, or no, we don't want to remove. Again, there's a little pop-up of what we'd receive when we hover over. Now, once we have our route defined, it is possible to go in and take a look at the route gear icon there. This would allow us to update the route, change the route, view history on the route. So when we have the route open, we can go into the gear icon. This is what brings us to this particular route settings area. If we want to, we can assign and send this link. This is kind of a necessary step in the process. The routes will not be visible to the user until they're physically assigned. So again, when we create the route, just make sure that we do the extra step of assigning the route. Otherwise, we won't be able to see that route from the mobile application. And if you didn't name your route in the prior screen, you'll see at the top there, we can rename the route. In this particular example, we're calling it property managers. And if you want to optimize your route, again, the system would find the most efficient way for you to travel your route stops. And again, when we make that selection to assign a route, it would take us into this other screen asking us, would you like to assign the route? Now, when we're in this particular screen here, you want to make sure that you're selecting the user that we want to assign the route to. Now, it is possible to assign the route to multiple individuals, but keep in mind that the route can only be actively used by one user at a time. Now, as we're going through our routes in preparation for our route stops, we can certainly go in and take a look at any notes that have been created on that particular company or contact record previously before we go in and step into that office. We can see route notes as well as all notes on that particular contact or organization. So in this case, we're seeing all notes. We can also print our routes. Now, the print route would be more so if we're giving someone a route, we're printing it out and handing them to them, and they can then write their notes on their paper. This is just displaying our route stops. We do have another print version that would be printing a play-by-play or a turn-by-turn. And then we have our route history. If we want to go in and see what we've done on this particular route historically, we can go in and make a selection on our day and take a look at that route history. Within the route history, again, it's going to break it down based upon our start and stops. And again, we'll show that here in just a minute when we go in to the CRM. We can show how we can start and stop our routes and document our route notes. So here I'm going to take you into a live CRM database so we can kind of take a look what we were looking at before. So here I'm in our dashboard. We've already defined our regions. If we want to build a route, we can go into our route area and we can select create a route. And we're seeing that same option to select my office, my address, or to select a contact. Again, if I go right into selecting my contact, the system's going to automatically default on the contacts and allow me to select. But before I select, again, take advantage of those regions. So it filters my list down. And then take advantage of your BD types, your route label. I'm just going to slide over. It's hidden just behind here, our contact groups. So you can see if I'm looking for individuals that are avid golfers, I can type in my BD type of golfing and it's going to filter down. And I can focus my route on those particular individuals. Now, again, I can select them individually, or I can have them added based upon my filtered selections, and the system adds them for me automatically. Right now, I've got 12 contacts added. When I'm happy with my route selections or my stops, I'm going to go ahead and hit my select done. And it's going to take me into that screen assigning a letter to my route stops. Now I've got probably quite a few not in the same geographical area here. My apologies for that. But again, you see that you can delete if we don't want that particular stop, or if I know I want a particular order, I can drag and drop the order of my route stops. If I want to see notes on that particular contact, I can see those notes from here, organization notes. So again, if I want to look at a little history before I define my route, I certainly can. If I need to manipulate area, or if I forget to add someone here, this little contact would allow me to go back and add an additional contact or stop. The gear icon again allows me to go into these route settings, assigning my route, looking at my history. We can see if I want to go back and add my office or add my address. I can clear the route and start all over again. If I can go back, if I move some things around, I don't necessarily want to do that anymore. I can optimize, and again, the system would find me that most optimal route. I can delete a route. I can start a new route, print a route, and again, that would be more of our paper form, handing out and writing our notes, or our play-by-play directions. Now, when we have a route defined and we have it assigned from the mobile application, it's going to look like this. Let me get it pulled up first. So we can hear I'm logged into the CRM mobile application. At the top there, I have a button that allows me to choose a route. I have one already selected, but I can certainly select a different route by clicking on my routes in the upper right-hand corner. It's going to show me the one that I'm currently assigned to, that I'm viewing, but I can certainly move to a different route if I need to, and it'll pull that route into my view. At the top, we do have our started, our pause, our complete. So I can start my route. If I want to add notes before I go to my next route stop, I can hit my add note button there. And again, I'm going to select my contact within that group, and I can add my note, and here my note's going to be documented. This note, when we add these notes, they are going to have a topic of route note. So it's important to recognize that. Some individuals, when using the route note, you might want to set it up as one of those activities that we pay attention to on our dashboard, since this is something that the system is dictating for us with that particular topic. So once I've got my start, I can pause. So if I stop for lunch or I need to stop during the day for some reason, I can pause my route, and then I can also complete my route. If I need to see the route details in the upper right-hand corner there, we can show details, the name of the route, who it's created by, who it's assigned to, and when it was assigned. Now, besides the routes, I do have the ability to maneuver within the CRM mobile. I can see my organizations. I can find an organization. I can find a contact. I can see any of my notifications. So it's not only just limited to the routes itself, but I can access other information through the mobile. We'll go back into the presentation. And we'll talk about our tracking of expenses. Now, when we talk about expenses, we kind of want to talk about laying the financials for the CRM financials and understanding what that means. There's a number of different financials numbers associated to a relationship, not only expenses, but we have, starting from our job management side, we have the estimated revenue, which usually refers to the amount that we're selling the job for. Not every job that has an estimated revenue will make it to a sold or an invoice stage. We typically recommend that as best practices, that as you're estimating your projects and jobs in the field, that you would document your estimated revenue just for historical purposes, so you can see what you estimated versus what you've actually invoiced for. Now, when we look at actual invoiced versus revenue, invoice is based on the total amount invoiced, including the taxes. Revenue refers more to the amount prior to taxes being added. Then we have our paid revenue, paid being the amount that we've collected, and that being displayed as actual revenue within the CRM. And finally, we get to that expenses area where we can define our expenses based on the total sum of spending that we're using to build our relationships in the CRM. We're taking individuals out to lunch. We're dropping off gift baskets. We're dropping off our swag. We want to be able to show that we've put forth an expense into producing these relationships and see if these relationships are paying back based upon what we're spending. So if we don't document that information, we could be spending a lot of money on a relationship that isn't necessarily producing any jobs for us. So if we go into the CRM, at the organization level is where we define these expenses. So we're in the organization, we're going to go over to the accounting, and once we're in the accounting, we can add those expenses. Now, before we add the expense, we need to talk about setting up those expense categories. Again, this is something that's done by the administrator. And we want, when we're thinking about categories, we're going to think about when we're setting up referral source. We want generic items. We don't want specifically named categories. So here we're going to see advertising, meals, adjusters, sponsorships, CE classes, travel tickets, gifts, donations, things of that nature. So that once we're in the expense itself, we have the ability to select our category. Even though we can't or assign an expense against an organization, we can assign it against a specific contact. So again, we're able to tie that expense back to the specific contact. We can give it a dollar amount, and we can save that expense in the system. Now, once we have the expenses saved, we can then pull expense reports based upon, so we can see where we're spending. So in this case, we're back in the CRM, we're under reports. Within the reports, we're doing company expenses. Now you can pull your company expenses based upon a date range. And then once you're within the report itself, again, you can filter by category, or even I even want to pull how much someone's been spending, a specific marketer. I can select their name here from the user list. Now, expenses can also be done from the mobile application. So typically, if you're using the routes through the mobile, you can stay in the mobile. You don't have to bounce back and forth between the mobile and the CRM. So our team from the field should be able to document their routes with notes, and they should be able to document their expenses right away too if they need to. If not, they can always come back into the office and document them in the CRM side of things. Just to show the mobile side of things, we'll go back in and take a look at the mobile. So once I'm in my routes and I select my, now from the route itself, I can add notes, but if I'm going to add my expenses, I actually do need to be in the contact. I can get down to the or I'm sorry, not the contact, the organization. I can get into that by clicking through. You'll notice that Trish's name was highlighted in blue. It allowed me to filter into Trish. Don't necessarily want to be in Trish, but I do want to be at the organization level. So you'll see our little buttons there in orange. I can click on my organizations. It's the first one on the right-hand side, pulls me back into the organization level. And if I scroll towards the bottom, you're going to see that I have the opportunity to add an expense from the mobile application. So again, I can't specifically add it from a route, but I can navigate within the mobile to the organization to add that expense. And again, we're going to select our category, selecting our contact, adding our amount, our expense date, and our description. And then we can save. And this expense will sync back up into the CRM. So when we run our report, we can see those expenses. That does end our presentation for today on our routes and expenses. Do we have any questions or concerns? I'll give you a few moments just to enter anything into the chat box. Again, if you think of anything after the fact, feel free to reach out to our support department at canmsys.com. If you're not an active CRM user, or we don't have the CRM set up for your company and you're interested in learning more about the CRM, again, this was only a portion of what the CRM can do. There are other things. Um, Reach out to our sales department for a free demo. I don't see any questions for today. So again, thank you for your time. And if you need any assistance, please reach out. Thank you.